because what you do as a robber, this is what you do. Let me explain it. Let me break it down. We planned it like Ocean's 11. We had everything. We had a bag with a pair of handcuffs, wire cutters to cut the phone, all sorts of weird masks. Because in a typical robbery team back in then, you'd have 4 people. You'd have a driver, you'd have a doorman, then you got your bag man. And your bag man is basically just a bag man. He goes with a bag and scoops the cash into it. And then you got your Frightener, which was me.
Did it ever go wrong? Like, when you get people who get locked in banks and all that, and like the job's totally gone wrong. Did that happen for you?
So what we were doing, we was having a laugh as we was doing our bits of work. There was a guy outside on Clapham High Street selling Santa hats for £1 each. Grabbed 3 Santa hats. I went, put these on over your mask. So we put ski masks on, then put the Santa hats on and burst into the bank, yo ho ho in. Merry Christmas everybody, we've come for the cash and all that. And so we've ended up robbing the gaff, and that's when they nicknamed us the Laughing Bank Robbers. Followed him in behind, pulled my gun out, put it up to the back of his helmet, and I went, drop the box. So he's dropped the box and the alarm's gone off.
Did anyone ever not? Did anyone try and be a hero?
Grabbed hold of us, they stunk a drink, dragged us into the back of his van and started torturing us. So what they done was one of them grabbed hold of my arm like that, and the other one grabbed that finger and twisted it until it snapped. And I thought to myself, what shall I do? And the only thing I thought to do was, let's get my own back on the police for what they've done.
So today we are joined by Noel Razor Smith, armed robber, bank robber, general robber, 8 life sentences. Spent 34 years behind the door, and finally sat down with you, Noel. So first and foremost, mate, I want to say thank you for coming on the show. I really do appreciate your time, mate. I do. How are you?
Pretty good, yeah.
All right.
As well as I can be after serving all them years in jail and surviving it.
How does it feel to be out now?
Well, it's not so much now. I mean, I've been out 14 years now. But it's when I first came out, when you first get out of a prison sentence, anyone who's been in prison for even 2 days will know the day you get out is the best day of your life because you're coming out to the real world again. Going into prison is, it really is like going into a foreign land. They speak a different language. They have different customs, different history. Once you're in prison, you're in a different world. And a lot of the stuff that you would use outside, like politeness and kindness and stuff like that, waste of time in there, mate. You've got to be hard to get through a prison sentence. You have to be. And especially if you end up with double figures and end up in a top security jail system, which is a nightmare. And it's not, it wouldn't be the sort of place that I'd want to go back to. Let's put it that way.
It's because, obviously, I've just met you today, but you seem like a real gent. And the reason I want to say that is because, obviously, there's a contrast between being a gentleman and, obviously, robbing banks and vans and all that type of stuff. And for me, and I think the viewers or listeners are going to look at that, and some people are fascinated by things like that. What led you up to doing that? But before we talk about that, I want to know, what was it like as a young and grown up? Where are you from?
Originally, actually, I was born in the centre of London. My parents were Irish immigrants, and we lived in North London, which was Islington, which was, bear in mind, I was born 15 years after the war, the Second World War. So where we lived, it was all bomb sites when I was a kid. All the houses had been bombed over there, and it was a bit of a dump and, proper. We had the bath in out the back garden to bathe in every week. Everyone bathed in a tin bath, and you filled up the water from the fire. You heated the water on the fire, pots of water, and just generally lived in the slums full of rats. And in fact, it was 1968 or 69. One of the babies on our street, his mother left her outside to catch a bit of sunshine in the pram, and when she came out, there was a huge rat in the pram with a baby, trying to bite the baby. That's how bad the area was. I remember the headline was "Rats as big as cats." That was in the local paper. But so we lived there for a while, and then my granddad already lived in South London in Balham. So when it came time to pull all them houses down, and they gave people places like all round North London, but we wanted to go to South London because my granddad was over there. So we ended up over in South London on a council estate, which was a big step up to what we'd had. This was, you had, didn't have central heating or anything like that, but you had a toilet indoors, you had a bath, you had hot water, and there was at least one gas fire, the rest were coal fires. But I mean, it was a major step up for us.
What's happening, guys? I hope you're enjoying the episode so far. If you are, please hit that like, hit the subscribe button, and press the notification bell so you don't miss another episode. It's crazy to hear you that you're saying it's a step up, because obviously, again, it's a relative, isn't it? Because, you know, our council estate now is still not great.
No.
And it's like, to say that was a step from you, it must have been really that bad. What were, like, did you live in the council estate for long? Was that kind of all your upbringing in that council estate?
All my upbringing, really, till I was about 15, and then I ran away from home.
What was that about?
Hey?
What was that about? Running away from home?
I mean, I think my story is pretty well known. I've written it in my books and that, and it's when I was 14 years old, I used to play truant from school with a mate of mine. Bearing in mind, I went to one of the worst, most violent schools in South London, Torured Secondary Modern. You know, the teachers had to, and this is no word of a lie, check it out, the teachers had to have security guards to take them to their cars at night. It was a boys' school, 1,800 boys, and the catchment area was Brixton, Stockwell, and places like that, Balham, Clapham. So all council estates, all really run-down areas, and you've got 1,800 boys in a school, in a boys' school that's 8 floors high, and all they want to do is terrorise everybody. The teachers were terrorised, mate. There was hardly any teaching going on in there at all.
Mm.
And I was lucky. I got expelled out of there when I was 14 for punching a French teacher and trying to throw him out a first floor window. But yeah, I was.
Hang on a minute. Why'd you do that?
He just annoyed me all the time. I hated trying to speak French, and it was one of them classes where you had to speak French. So of course he knew that I hated it, so he'd dig me out all the time. And then one day he said something to me, and called me up in front of the class and pointed me out as a ridiculous character who would never be able to speak any other language but Cockney. And then I just turned on him. I just turned around and thought, I'm not having that. And I just punched him right in the jaw. And the window was open, but it was only like a kind of a half window. And I was trying to force him out for it. And he was screaming, he was shitting himself. And I got expelled for that. But before I got expelled is how I got into crime. I was always a bit of an adventurous kid, you know. I mean, we used to do things like the South London Press newspaper was not far from us, and it was on I think it was 8-story building, and there was a clock hanging out over the building from the roof. Mm-hmm. And when we was kids, we used to go up there and hang out on the hands of the clock about like 60 foot from the ground. Because we'd seen Buster Keaton and all that, in you know, and we used to go down to railway tunnels, go on the railway tracks, and then we'd go right into the tunnel, wait for a train to come. And in the tunnel, there's these little recesses in every tunnel that you can stand in if a train's coming past. Mm-hmm. So that was like our fucking, what are they called? Parks, you know, like that. You'd stand there and the train would come by, and because you were on the ground, you don't realise how big a train is. I mean, the floor of the train was actually there, and you could see people going by, and this would be flashing by, and the huge noise and the rush, and it was great. And then we started doing things like trying to stay on the train line for as long as possible to see who was going to get killed. But yeah, we'd done all strange shit like that. But I wasn't really a criminal as such. I never ever thought to myself that I would be a criminal.
But you're just always up to no good.
Yeah, I was one of them kind of kids that I like to fight, I like to run, I like to climb things, you know, just a normal boy really, I suppose. Mm-hmm. And then I was bunking school when I was 14 with a mate of mine, Mickey, and we were up in Tulse Hill, which is a sort of run-down part of South London, and Gypsy Hill, rather. And we got suddenly a van pulled up, an old Commer van, and like 4 or 5 big geezers jumped out, plain clothes, grabbed hold of us. They stunk a drink, dragged us into the back of this van and started torturing us. So what they done was one of them grabbed hold of my arm like that, and the other one grabbed that finger and twisted it until it snapped. So I went unconscious, and I come round to him slapping me face. They're beating my mate up as well in the back of this van. And I come round to someone saying, break his other finger. And then he grabbed hold of this hand, and I was we're 14 years old. What we didn't know was they were an undercover burglary squad from Gypsy Hill, and they had kind of a bit of a reputation at the time. We didn't know, we weren't into criminality, so we never come across them. And when they come across us, they decided to make us confess to all the burglaries that they hadn't cleared up. Mm-hmm. So they got us back to the police station, and by now, we're kids. We're ready to fucking, admit to anything. started World War II, I sank the Titanic, let me sign, I'll tell you where I've done it. And so we admitted we cleared their books up. But then when we went to court now, we realised we're out of the clutches of the police, we can tell the truth. So we told the magistrate, we told our brief, and this is juvenile court in the 1970s, which was unusual because they were police courts. And we told our brief, and he explained it to the woman magistrate, and she went, "Do you know what?" She said, "I've been looking at this case, and I'm looking at some of the things that have been stolen in these burglaries, grandfather clocks and things like that, 3 o'clock in the morning. I can't believe 2 14-year-old schoolboys are going to go out and do this sort of thing. I want an investigation." So that was it. They dropped all the charges eventually. But the police, we were advised to sue the police for what they'd done. And the police kind of had a war of attrition against us. They didn't want us to go to court. It took about 3 or 4 years to get to court. But they didn't want us going to court because their mates were suspended whilst this was going on. So they used to drag me into a car and just twist me ear, twist me nose, poke me in the eye and tell me to drop the charges and all. This went on for months. And they kept coming up to my mother's house, 5 in the morning, right in the house, saying they're looking for stolen goods. There weren't no stolen goods. They knew there weren't. So eventually I moved out of the house thinking that I'd do my family a favour. I'm not going to school. Right? I've been beaten up and tortured by the police and now I'm disillusioned with life. Right? I'm only 14. So I thought, I've got to protect my family and the police are going to do something to them. They're going to find something sooner or later. So I decided to move out and I started living in a derelict car. And then I went a little bit mad. What happened was, because I was now free and I didn't report to nobody and I had no parents that I knew of at that time, what I mean is, I'm living in a derelict car. And I thought to myself, what shall I do? And the only thing I thought to do was, let's get my own back on the police for what they've done. So a mate of mine who lived on another estate, he was a biker and he showed me how to hotwire motorbikes. So that's what I used to do. I used to go and steal motorbikes, hotwire them, no crash helmet, and just ride around the streets of London, South London, looking for the old bill. And when I see a police car at traffic lights or something, I'd ride up to them, kick their door, give them plenty of that, and then boom, I'd be off and I'd get them to chase me.
Were you not fearing the consequences of that?
No, I didn't.
Knowing that what they'd
already beaten the shit out of me. I mean, they broke my finger and everything as an innocent kid. So I know that if I get caught, I'm getting a fucking hiding. But I don't care. I want to hurt them as much as they're hurting me.
Yeah.
So I've done stupid things like I nicked a copper's private motorbike out of the back of Clapham police station. Crept in there one night, rode his bike out. So he was after me. So he was pulling all my mates and saying, "Fucking find him." It was a right rare bike. It was a 380 or something, a Honda 380. And so he kept telling my pals, "You tell Smith when I see him, he's getting it." And I kept sending message back as well, "Yeah, fuck you, you mug." Trashed his bike, right, rode it into the pond at Clapham Common and just left it in the pond and then phoned up the police and said his bike's in the pond. So there was kind of this relationship between me and the police that was, we both had the needle with each other, but I was just a kid. One night I pulled up at Stratton police station, 3 o'clock in the morning on a stolen motorbike, brick through the window and sat there revving it, waiting for them to come out and chase me. And they chased me. I knew all the back roads and all the ways to get away on a bike. So that was really my introduction to criminality. So because of that, I eventually got nicked for stealing motorbikes and I was sent to Send Detention Centre, first I was sent to Stamford House, which was a juvenile remand home over in West London.
Is that like a borstal?
No, it was kind of like a care home, really.
Right, I see.
If you got an unruly certificate as a juvenile, meaning that you weren't able to be managed in the community, you would go there. Likewise, if you committed a murder and you had to go on remand, you'd go there as well if you were under 16.
Right,
you know what I mean? So it was kind of a mixed prison. There was some serious criminals and some serious and some really innocent people who just were orphans or just had nowhere to go and had no one to look after them. So I ended up escaping out there. It was easy to escape. I escaped out there 14 times in about 3 weeks. They kept catching me, bringing me back. I'd go again. The things they tried to stop me was when they brought me back after about the third time, the governor made a ruling that I had to wear pyjamas all the time so that if I escaped, I'd be in pyjamas and I'd be easy to spot. So I had to wear these stripy pyjamas like something out of a fucking concentration camp. but I still escaped in them as well. And then when they brought me back the last time, as they were bringing me back into the prison, they opened the big double gates and it pulls into the yard. I noticed that over the other side of the yard, next to the fence, was a police van that was already there delivering someone, but it was right next to the fence.
Mm-hmm.
So as they brought me out of the van, I've broke away, legged it across the courtyard with them all shouting, jumped up on the police van, onto the bonnet, onto the roof, boom, onto the fence and away. Yeah. And after that, they wouldn't have me back.
Where were you hiding when you were escaping?
I was going back to my car because no one knew where I lived. It was on an estate where I knew everybody on the estate, so I could go to people's houses 3 o'clock in the morning, bang on the window, and go, "Can I come in?" And they'd let me in.
Was it your own car at that age?
No.
No, just a stolen car.
Yeah, it was a Triumph Herald, I remember.
Bloody hell, man.
Yeah, and I used to sleep in that.
Yeah.
Go on. So I became a real sort of a criminal during that summer just by escaping, having to fucking steal stuff in order to keep myself going, to feed myself and stuff like that. So I became a criminal, but I threw myself into it. I really thought, yeah, if I'm a criminal, I'm going to be a fucking criminal 24/7. And I was. And then eventually I was arrested for stealing motorbikes. And they sent me to Sen Detention Centre in Woking in Surrey, which was, back in those days, it was called the Short Sharp Shock. And it was supposed to, the idea behind it, and this is government policy, right? The idea behind it was that you would take all juvenile offenders who were arrested under the age of 17 or 18, and you would send them to camps for either 3 months or 6 months, where the minute you come in, you'd have your head shaved, you'd be beaten black and blue.
Like military style.
Yeah, proper. It was proper sent. I mean, the guys who survived that were pretty hard men. You all come out as really super fit because it was. It's hard to explain it. They used to try and humiliate you and beat you as much as you could. That was their job. They picked all the bully screws out of all the prisons all over the country and said, "Come and have a go at fucking this, the new government thing, short, sharp shock. We've got carte blanche to beat these kids up," which they did, and kids died. Kids died. That's why they stopped it.
Bloody hell, mate. Did you see anything like that?
Well, I've experienced it myself. When I first went to Send, this is how they used to work it. The screws at Send, at the detention centres, because they're dealing with juveniles, they didn't wear uniforms. So what they would do as a uniformity, they would wear their HMP black raincoats, but the epaulets where it said HMP, they would turn them over so you could just vaguely see HMP. They weren't allowed to wear uniform, but they did. And what they done was they got into the court. 2 of them come into the court cell after I'd been sentenced to 3 months. And I was down in the cell smoking. By this time, I've got my leather jacket on, my collar up, my quiff, you know what I mean, smoking away. And these 2 geezers in raincoats come into the cell, open the door. So I look at them, and one of them went, "What's your name?" So I said, "Noel." Right, I think they're probation officers or something. Next thing, crack, straight round the side of my face, and I've gone off the bench. And the other one's grabbed hold of me, dragged me up, and he went, "What's your fucking name?" I ain't got a clue what he wants, so I went, "Noel Smith." So the other one's gone crack, hit me in the stomach. I've gone down again. We ain't even reached the detention centre yet. This is in the courts, in the cell downstairs. So he said to me, he went, "When I ask for your name," because they were all ex-army, "I don't want to know what your mummy calls you. I want to know your fucking name." So eventually I get it.
Yeah,
What's your name? Smith. Crack in the other side of my face. Smith what? Now I don't know what the fuck he's
wants your
talking
full name,
about.
doesn't
Yeah, Smith N. Crack. So I get this little beating down there, and eventually they said, "Smith, sir." You say sir when you speak to an officer. I'd never had none of this before. So I thought, fuck this is rough, mate. So they got us in a van, there was about 4 of us, and we're driving out to Sen Detention Centre, and they wasted no time. There was 5 screws in the back with us, and they just told us what was going to happen to us when we got there. "You are going to be fucking slaughtered, you dirty little thieving bastards." I mean, they were really serious. And when we pulled in at the detention centre, there was a gauntlet of 8 screws, 4 on each side, in their shirt sleeves. And as we come off the van, they were punching us, kicking us, pulling our ears, everything. We're just like annoyance shit, you know. I mean, not really hurting you, but everyone's screaming because they think, "Oh, fuck me, it's going to get worse." So when we got in the reception, they stripped us all naked, right? Now, bear in mind, we're all 14-year-old kids, 15. And they made us stand in reception naked, the 4 of us, for about an hour. And while they went about their business, people would come in, go out. We're standing there like idiots. So, and they'd all make disparaging remarks, these screws. He's a girl and he ain't even got a fucking dick and all stuff like that. Just humiliation. Then what they do is they take you into a bathroom and it's got 2 baths, one each side, and it's got 6 inches of lukewarm water in each bath. Right? That was their thing. So they'd say, when I say go, they started everything with, when I say go. This is what the screws used to start with. When I say go, you run, you jump into that fucking bath and you scrub your dirty little body. Now I'm with another geezer here, he's never been in jail either. And the screw went, go. And I've got into the bath. This geezer's took him at his word. He ran into the middle, jumped, come down in the fucking bath on both his elbows and smashed both his elbows, broke them. He was shipped out of the place like that day. You know, he couldn't go no more. But that's how terrified he was. He took him at his word, jump into the bath. So they would make you march everywhere and double time and bunny up around the parade square at 5 a.m. with your bed pack on your back. Just crazy shit. And they had us working out in the field in the middle of winter. And our job was to plant beans. So one person would be in the line with like a wooden stick thing, and they'd poke a hole in the ground. Of course, the ground was like fucking concrete. It was winter. They'd be struggling to poke, and then someone behind would come with a bean and drop it in, and then someone would come behind you and fill it in. Right, so that was your work. And I had enough of it, and everyone was going, I've been there about 2 weeks, everyone was saying, this is mental, we should do something to these screws, you know, but we were all kids. But of course, me being the fucking idiot of the bunch, I said, all right then, what we'd do is tomorrow we refuse to work. And they were all up for it, yeah. Got out there the next day, huge big farmer screw, about 25 stone, big red face. So he went, right, get in the shed, get your boots, your Wellington boots on, and get your shovels. So nobody moved. So he went, what's going on here then? So I stepped forward, imagine me, little skinny 14-year-old. And I went, we ain't working. So he went, you what? I said, we're not working. He said, is that right? He said, all of you? So everyone's all standing there, nobody says nothing. And he went, all right, I'll start with you. Crack, punched me in the side of the jaw. I've gone flying. And by the time I'd landed about 3 foot away, all the rest of them were pulling their boots on and getting their shovels to go out and work. But
I didn't blame them. Like, you didn't want a bit of that, you know what I mean?
But what I'd done was, being a little bit of sorry for that, I got my shovel and then I chased this big fat fucker all around the field. This screw, I wanted to cave his head in with a shovel. So eventually, someone's rang a bell, a riot bell, and all the screws had come running down from the thing. But they've realised, what they've realised is, this kid's too much for us, you know. I mean, the rest of them are taking it, like, you know what I mean? But he's not. But I could never take it. I was one of them kind of kids. I always wanted to fucking fight back. And I hated bullies. And so they realised they couldn't do nothing with me. So they lost me 4 days and put me in the hospital. So I'm in the hospital just serving out the end, watching the telly and everything. I didn't really give a shit. So they let me out, fitter, and I eventually... What happened was I met people in Send, because we would talk, obviously we'd all band together and talk. We had a common enemy in the screws and the system. So we would talk about crimes we'd done and crimes we were going to do. And there was a mate of mine from North London, and he said, me and him was talking, and I said, I'd like to do some robberies. So he said, my brother can get you a gun. He said, he might sell it to you. So
How old were you this time?
I'm 15 now.
15.
So when I get out of DC, I go and see his brother and him, and I ended up buying a Stevens 16-gauge shotgun, single barrel, from 1916. It actually was fucking before the First World War, and a Luger, but the Luger had a bent barrel and it didn't have no magazine. There was no ammo with it, but I didn't want ammo. You know, it wasn't about shooting people. It was about having the things to go to work with.
Yeah.
So we went out and done our first robbery, and we done a record shop up in Streatham, and we planned it like Ocean's 11. We had everything. We had a bag with a pair of handcuffs, wire cutters to cut the phone. This is a fucking record shop. You know, all sorts of weird shit, masks, gloves. We had a geezer outside waiting in a Mark II Cortina, stolen Mark II Cortina with a stocking mask on, revving up. So we've gone in, and eventually I've gone up to the geezer on the counter, and as I went to pull the Luger out, it got caught on the lining of my coat. So as I pulled it out, there's a bit of lining hanging down. And he starts laughing. So he went bang. He's behind the counter. Me and my mate are like that. So suddenly I went, fucking bang. I went, get the money out or I'll blow your head off. And now he knows it's on. So he's shitting himself. So he reaches down and he takes out a tenner and puts it on the counter. So I said, what's that? He said, we took the money to the bank at 3 o'clock. He said, that's all there is. So we grabbed that and I told him a load of guff about, oh man. I said to him, listen, bearing in mind we're 15 years old. I said, see that roof over there? We got a sniper on that roof. He's got his gun aimed at your head. We're kids. If you leave this shop within 10 minutes after we're gone, you're going to get shot. Now, where's the phone? He said, I haven't got a phone. So we were going to tie him up and all that, but we went, nah, fuck this, we got to get out of here. So we got a tenner. And as we're going out, I've grabbed an armful of LPs off a rack by the door. Turns out that 22 copies of the Bay City Rollers Greatest Hits. Yeah. All the girls in the flats loved them, but weren't no good for us. And my pal went, the driver went, £3.50 each for fucking less than £3.50 each for an armed robbery. That's, you know what I mean? I'm not doing no more of these. But me, I was hooked. That was it.
Did you get a rush instantly?
Yeah.
From just doing it, even though you
Do you know
didn't
what
get
it was? It was this. It was the fact that up until then I'd been beaten by adults and tortured by adults, and suddenly I'm in a situation where I'm in fucking charge. I've got the gun. You're doing what I say for a change. Yeah. And I felt 10 foot fucking tall when I had the gun in my hand.
Thing is, though, when you're doing that, though, I get it. I get you want to put two things up the authorities and that, which I understand. But when you're robbing a record shop, you're not doing that to the authorities, are you? You're doing it to some bloke who works in the shop.
You don't know that. You're 15, you know what I mean? As far as you know, you're against the police. I was against the police all the time. So doing things like that to me was like a way of riling the police up. So
when did you get involved with your first serious offence?
Well, pretty soon after that, we started doing rent offices. I bought a better shotgun and some ammo, and we started doing rent offices. Mm-hmm. And then I ended up nicked for, I can't remember what it was. I think it was possession of the firearm, of the shotgun. And I went in and done 2 years for that. And I've done that in Wandsworth Prison.
What was that like?
It was an eye-opener, mate, believe me, because from juvenile prisons are violent and they're kind of unruly, but adult prisons, there's a more serious edge to the violence. Like if you're in juvenile jail, someone might want to cut you across the face. It was called striping people, but nobody would want to cut your throat and kill you, whereas in the adult jails, people did.
Yeah.
So going into adult jails was... it was a real eye-opener. What happened was I went up to... I got nicked for armed robbery in 1977, me and my mate Peter, and we went up to the Old Bailey. I was 15, he was 16, and most of our contemporaries were in juvenile court. We were up at the Old Bailey for armed robbery and possession of firearms. It's fucking mental at the age of 15. So our brief said to us, look, I think they had about 8 charges. He said, plead guilty to 1, and 1 attempted and possession of the gun, and then you'll end up getting a Borstal sentence, which was 6 months to 9 months, 6 months to 2 years. So we said, all right. So he said, I'll have a word with the judge and see what we can do. Anyway, we pleaded guilty. The judge came out and went, this is not America. I don't make deals. Who do you think you are? You know, I mean, it's not a television program. You can't make a deal. He said, I take into account all the leniency. He said, but... he said, I'm going to use a Section 53 sentence. What's that? Section 53, it's Section 53, Paragraph 2 of the Children and Young Persons Act 1933. And it was a very rarely used sentence in those days. And it was used, the only way you could justify it as a judge giving it to anyone under the age of 18, and I remember this to a T because I've read it so many times, was... in order to give the sentence to a juvenile, the juvenile must have committed crimes that would warrant 14 years imprisonment or more in an adult.
Bloody hell, man.
I'd have got 14 years as an adult, and he gave me 3 years as a juvenile. And that sentence, the Section 53 sentence, being different from every other sentence, is that you've got no remission. You've done the sentence. Yeah. You could get out on parole. You got parole... I think it was twice you got offered parole, once after 2 years and at the end, just towards the end of the 3 years. And I ended up doing every day of it.
So you get out when you were 18?
Yeah.
And what
no,
do you
I was 19.
When you were 19?
Yeah.
So obviously you've had that taste. It's completely different to the young prisons and all that. Did it dissuade you at all, or were you still like, you know?
Oh, I was, you know, what people don't understand is if you get kids from a young age, 14, 15, and put them through that kind of system and that kind of stuff that's going on around them, you've got two choices to make. Most kids, I think it's the majority I read somewhere, by the time they're in their 20s have grown out of everything and they no longer do crime, you know, they just naturally grow out of it. But you've got other kids like me who just see it as your life. That's it. This is what I am. This is what I do, and that's what.
So you don't feel you're going back in or out like that because you just know because you made the commitment when you were younger, didn't you? I'm gonna be a criminal if I'm gonna do it
24/7.
So at 19, what were your thoughts then? Then let's just do a bigger job.
No, I actually got out at that time, and I met a girl, and I had a couple of kids, and I settled down for a little while. But then in the early 80s, money was really tight, and I had a mate of mine, and we were kind of undercover robbers. And what I mean by that is, me and him would go out like odd times on spec and rob banks or post office vans, just the two of us, and then just disappear for 6 months. Wouldn't do it again. And then we'd go out and rob something else. We were part-time robbers.
Did you have the money to disappear for 6 months?
Yeah.
Is that why? Because of the bank robbery?
Yeah.
Can I just ask about that? When you going into a bank and stuff, because again, I've seen it on the films, I've seen it all that type of stuff. How is it? Like, I mean, I know it'll be a lot different now, I'm assuming, but how easy was it? Was it a case of just running in there with a weapon and saying, give us the money, hand the money? Or did you have to actually plot it? Like, we're going to pull up at a certain time, we're going to make sure there's, do you do a recce on the area? Like, how does it work?
If you don't know by now, I run a business called The Content PT. I create content for influencers, PTs, online coaches, and fitness brands all around the world. So if you are someone who's in need for sexy content for your social media, or you really want to maintain a competitive edge in your industry, drop me a DM on Instagram.
It depends really, because I ended up on a few occasions working with different gangs. A lot of the time I worked on my own, went into places, robbed them on my own and got clean away. And when I started working with gangs, the thing was, they would either do things on spec, because what you do as a robber, this is what you do. Let me explain it. Let me break it down. If you're an armed robber now, that's your game. Everywhere you go, every minute of the day outside, you're seeing banks, you're seeing security, and I still do it now. I see a security van, I look at my watch, right? Because that's what you do. You store this information until you've got about 15 that you know will go. And because you don't want the police to be waiting for you at any of them, you pick at the last moment. Right, remember that one, so-and-so, let's go and do that one. Mm-hmm. So you would go. I remember I was working with a guy in the 80s, and he was a bit of a funny character. And we were waiting to rob a security van down in Balham, and we were standing outside Balham tube station, and there's kind of an overhang, and we were in out of the rain, and we're armed up, and we're waiting for the van to come to a building society down at High Street. And the van turned up, and I went, come on in, let's go. And I've walked off, and when I looked round, he was still there, shaking, bone white. So I've gone back to him, what are you doing? He went, I can't do it. I said, what do you mean you can't? He said, I can't fucking do it, I can't do it. I went, all right, I'll do it on my own. So I fucked off up the street, get to the door as the security van's going in, the security guard, followed him in behind, right, pulled my gun out, put it up to the back of his helmet, and I went, drop the fucking box. So he's dropped the box and the alarm's gone off. With that, my mate's come in the door behind me. I thought he'd gone home. There he is with a mask, and suddenly, he's like fucking Superman. He's like, no fear at all. If I don't get the fucking money, none of you'll be going home. You'll be going home in body bags. And I'm going, he was shitting himself 2 minutes ago. But he was just a weird character, you know, and we done a lot of that sort of stuff.
Were you getting much money out of these banks at this time?
Not really, no. I mean, when you think about it now, we're getting like, I suppose, we're getting between 6 and 12 grand out of like just run-ins, which is great money in those days. You're talking about fucking, you know, 4 grand each just for going in 5 minutes and you're out. That was good though. But I did go on to do lots of bigger stuff. I mean, we started doing what they called the reserve game in the 90s, which was big money.
What's
that? Talking about, well, the reserve game was, you could only use it on 2 banks. That was the Allied Irish and the Midland, and the Midland's gone now. Mm-hmm. We knew someone whose cousin worked in the Midland Bank. So we used to get information of them, but they didn't know they was giving us information. You know, just friendly chats at barbecue and all that. Cab drivers were great for that shit. Anyway, we found out that the Midland Bank and the Allied Irish would get their reserve in once a month, and the reserve is the cash they'd need for the month.
Mm-hmm.
So what they used to do was, whereas most banks, you would deliver the money to go in the vault. In the Midland, it used to go in the head cashier's safe, which was under the front counter.
Mm-hmm.
So once you know that, and you ask for that, that's what you're getting. Most people don't know what to ask for.
Yeah.
So we come in, and we would take, one in Croydon, we took £48,000 in cash out there. Another one, we took 32,000. You were getting like in the 30s and 40 sort of thousands when you was doing that. Which wasn't bad money, because I robbed a couple of security vans and ended up with like 10 grand to share between three of us. So, we was doing everything we could to earn a few quid. And at that time, I was with a gang called the Flying Squad, nicknamed us the Laughing Bank Robbers, which was for our behaviour, really, because we were all professionals. We'd all done Bird.
Mm-hmm.
We'd all, at that time, I'd already done a 19-year sentence for robbery. My pal had done 12 years. My other mate had done 9. So when you get together, you know that there's a good chance that you can get nicked.
Mm-hmm.
Although criminals don't think like that. If they thought like that, they would never go out and commit crime. So what we were doing, we was having a laugh as we was doing our bits of work. This was in the 90s. And we robbed a Midland bank in Clapmire Street, Christmas Eve, which is my birthday. And the banks were open till 1 o'clock on Christmas Eve. And we went down and robbed it at 10:30. But as we were going into the bank, there was a guy outside on Clapmire Street selling Santa hats for £1 each. Mm-hmm. So I said, here, fuck it. Grabbed 3 Santa hats. I went, put these on over your mask. So we put ski masks on, then put the Santa hats on and burst into the bank, yo, ho, ho, in. Merry Christmas, everybody. We've come for the cash and all that. And so we've ended up robbing the gaff, and that's when they nicknamed us the Laughing Bank Robbers. So we lived up to that.
Were you never scared? Like on these? Because like, what, like if you've did jobs before where you've came away with £3,000 each, surely you know that, is this worth risking me freedom for? I'm on the radar now. The coppers already know who I am. Like, is it worth it at that point, or is it still just about the buzz?
It's still about the buzz, and it's about the fact that you don't know any fucking different, and you're comfortable with prison. So if you get caught, you know what prison's about. You're known in prison. It's like home from home for you. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of that, but it's also about getting the big money. Mm-hmm. We were always after the big prize, always.
How did you spend the money? Did you have to quickly spend it?
That was my actual thing, was that I think you should spend the money as quickly as you can, because you don't want to be caught with that money. Mm-hmm. You get caught with that money, you've done a robbery for nothing. They're getting the money back.
Yeah.
So every time I would go out and spend money, I was buying cars, I had a penthouse up in Croydon, penthouse flat. We were just buying whatever we wanted. Every time I'd done a robbery, I used to go down to Moss in Croydon and get a suit made.
It's mad that, because obviously now you couldn't get away with that, because everything's just, you couldn't just buy a house with cash, and it's all different now. So was that the scenario? You could do what you want?
Yeah.
So when you were making that kind of money, like coming out with 48 grand after 5 minutes worth of work, did you feel like the man? Was your ego scratched then? Were you like,
yeah,
I've won?
I always felt bad afterwards. Mm-hmm. Right? After the robbery, when everyone else was dancing around, we were in the money, throwing the money up in the air and everything, I'd be the one sitting there, like just having a fag on a chair, and I'd be in a depression.
Really?
Yeah, I don't know why. Well, I do know why. It's because the high's gone. Mm-hmm. The high is the robbery. The money ain't the robbery. The money ain't the high. It's actually committing the act. So I would be sitting there depressed.
Was any part of that, like for getting when you said you'd go in and try and get the big money, the big jobs, was that because you were skint when you were young? Like, did you want that? I want the money. I want the nice cars. I want that stuff.
The money was kind of incidental.
Was it?
Yeah, for me, not for other people, but for me, it wasn't really about the money. The money was nice, but for me, it was about control and controlling other people. Mm-hmm. I was a bad, horrible bastard. I was known as the Frightener in our robbery team, because in a typical robbery team back in then, you'd have 4 people. You'd have a driver, you'd have a doorman. Now, the doorman's job is, once you get into a premises, he's normally got a fireman's axe, and he will stop people coming. If someone comes in, they ain't leaving, and he won't let nobody leave until the robbery's over. Mm-hmm. Then you've got your bag man, and your bag man is basically just a bag man. He goes with a bag and scoops the cash into it. And then you've got your Frightener, which was me. And I was always the Frightener. I was 18 stone then. Mm-hmm. And we used to wear big leather jackets and ski masks and everything, and I had a right good growl. If I went into a bank and told people to get on the floor, they fucking got on the floor, believe me.
Did anyone ever not? Did anyone try and be a hero?
Only once.
What
Only
happened?
once. Funny enough, I was telling this story the other day. I'd forgotten about it. We were robbing a bank in Brixton one day, and I pulled out the shotgun, and we're all in our places, pulled out the shotgun. There was about 20 people in the bank, 20 customers. So I've put the shotgun up like that, one, right, everybody on the floor, and everybody just hit the deck, except one geezer, right, black fella over by the counter. So I've gone to walk forward. I looked at him, went, mate, hit the fucking floor. He said, I ain't afraid, I'm a yardie. He said, I ain't afraid of guns, I'm a yardie. I went, yeah? So I've gone up to him with a shotgun. I said, you don't hit the floor, I'm going to blow your fucking knees off. And boom, he was down like fucking. But I've never had nobody yet actually try to get involved, because I was told early on by an old armed robber of mine, a mate of mine, can't remember his name now, Dave, but he said, don't let anyone get within an arm's length of your gun, and that way no one's going to try and tackle you. The gun scares them. Keep the gun out in front of you, and that's what I used to do. As soon as I come in, I'd order them, go to the back of the wall, lay on the floor.
How did you know what to do? Like, I know that sounds mad, but like, I wouldn't know where to start. So how did you know how to come up with that process? Like, one's a doorman, one's a bagman. How did you watch stuff? Did you know other people, or was it literally just trial and error? Getting good at it?
It's funny you should ask that question, because it's when I first started doing robberies, it was stuff that I'd seen on the telly, right? But as I got into it and became more professional, you meet people in prison who are also in for robbery, or they're getaway drivers, or they're armourers, you know, and all the robbers in prison gravitate towards each other. Like the drug dealers just gravitate towards each other.
Yeah.
And all the robbers talk about is like armed robberies. And you get a lot of your information, because still the same today. If you go out tomorrow and commit 3 bank robberies and get nicked, and they put you in prison on remand to wait trial, they have to give you what they call the depositions, which is every photograph and every piece of evidence from that robbery, from that crime. So you're sitting in your cell with paperwork like that, and so is every single robber. Yeah. And you're looking at page 1. They don't do this now, but you're looking at page 1 on the bank robbery, and they're saying things like, our security system means that if the manager is in the morning, we pull the left curtain back so that people not coming up know that, you know, stuff like that. It's worth gold. So we pass our debts around to each other and start. That's how we ended up doing a fucking the Allied Irish, because someone else was doing them and earning big money. And Thomas Cook's travel agents, you're getting like 30, 40 grand out of Thomas
Were you doing them and all?
Yeah.
Did it ever go wrong? Like, you know, when you get people who get locked in banks and all that, and like the job's totally gone wrong. Did that happen for you?
Nah.
No.
We were too professional for that. Let me tell you something, right? Unlike a lot of other robbery firms, we had a kind of this kind of false honour amongst us, that we had a certain code. We would not go on a robbery drunk or out of our heads. That was a way to get yourself fucking nicked for murder, for killing somebody. And I was in a car one day, we was going to a robbery in Croydon, and we had a new geezer who was going to be the doorman in the back. And as we're driving up the road, I'm sitting in the front seat, and I hear, and I look back, and he's got a knife and a load of coke. I went, stop the car. I went, take the gun off him, get out. He went, what? I said, I'm not having him in a bank coked up with a fucking loaded firearm. What, are you mental? And I wouldn't have it. So we classed ourselves as severely professional, and we learnt that through trial and error. You know, obviously, here's how it works with bank robberies, or with van robberies, with any robbery. You can go into somewhere that you know has got 100 grand behind the counter, and they won't give it to you. What do? Your choices are this: start shooting, then you're bang in trouble and you still might not get the money. Or you fuck off and go to another bank that you've been thinking about, because there's so many banks and bands about. You don't have to be like violent. I mean, sort of physically violent. Obviously, it's a violent act. You got 4 geezers bursting into premises with fucking leather jackets and masks on, waving around firemen's axes and guns. That's a bad try. And I know I've done 5 years in therapy in prison and learned about all this victim stuff that never occurred to me before when I was robbing. Because when you're actually doing it, you don't see people as people. You see them as cardboard cutouts. That's how you can do what you do. That's how you can order them about and threaten to shoot their legs off and threaten to, put an axe over their head, because they're not real to you. So when I was in therapy, I started realising how many fucking victims I had. And it was horrifying. I mean, most of the banks I robbed, there was at least 10, 15 people in them.
Because that's what I mean. You're going to have someone's dad, son, daughter. There could be all types who are going to be affected, you know what I mean?
I got married when I got out. And my wife was in London one day. She was up in Croydon, and she was in one of the supermarkets that had a post office in it, and there was an armed robbery. And she was nowhere near it. She was like 2 miles away. But these guys come in, guns and axes, jumped over the counter, smashed the counter down, jumped in the counter, put the guns up to the woman's head and nicked the cash. She see it all happening, the alarms going off and all that. She was traumatised for fucking about 2 years. And, you know, she used to get panic attacks over it. But she wasn't. And that made me think, how did the people feel that were my victims? Because I was like a fucking caricature of a robber, laughing and joking and everything. But
how
like,
how did she, like, even your wife, like, how do they trust you? Like, do they say, like, I can't believe you would have did, I know you're not doing it anymore, but like, I can't believe you did such a thing. I can't believe it's you. Or is it a case of that was your past, was what it was?
It's a case of you can't unring a bell. You know, what's happened has happened. And I've been very open about the things that I've done. I've written several books about it, my life and in prison and out. And, you know, I say to people, the way it goes now, I've done all them years in jail. And I say, just accept, you know, that I've done that stuff. Loads of people now that I meet say, I could never imagine you doing it.
You know, that's what I'm saying when I'm sitting here with you. That's what I'm thinking. But the way I look at it is, and it's not, I'm not trying to say that doing what you've done is any better than out else, but the way I look at it is, like, I'm not condoning it, but like, at least you're not a scum of the earth doing some. You're not a beast. Do you know what I mean? Like, and it's still not good what you've done. But I also understand, like, it's against the authorities, the establishment. You want the money. It's the buzz. You're chasing a different type of thing. You're not trying to harm anyone. You're not hurt anyone. And I feel like ultimately, like, that's what you're living. You've lived also a movie, but you've paid the price. You know, that's the thing. When you're talking about these bank jobs and stuff, I'm assuming everything you're talking about is the stuff you've been done for.
Yeah, of course.
Is there a lot of stuff you're getting away with?
Well, the police asked me that once. Flying squad inspector, who I work with now, doing talks and that in schools, said to me a year ago, she said, how many crimes did you get away with? And I went, probably about 2/3.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? So
yeah.
that's that.
Got to be the case.
I don't want to say how many there was or what they were.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, when you're a criminal and you're a working criminal, you're not only committing robbery, you're stealing cars, right, for getaway cars, you're sourcing guns, you're sourcing ammunition, you're plotting up on places, and also you deal with a lot of rivals, you know, people who you have ag with in the criminal world, and your violence really comes there. My violence was never on any of the robberies. It was always in prison or against other gangs.
Did anyone ever get hurt on your robberies?
No, not physically, but we did. The only time we ever fired a shot was me and a mate of mine was doing one in Mitcham, and the alarms went off, and we got the money and we legged it out, got into the car, and I was driving, and he had a sawn-off shotgun, and behind us a fire engine started following us. Right, they'd seen we'd on the run from the robbery, so they're following us. And have you ever seen a fire engine in your rearview mirror and it's right up fucking behind you? And they're bibbing their horn and letting off their alarms and everything. And I said to me, mate, I said, get in the back seat. I said, and fire a shot into their radiator. You can't fucking miss it. That will slow them down. So him not understanding in the heat of the moment, gets into the back seat, climbs over into the back seat, gets the shotgun. Instead of opening the window and firing out, he fires through the back windscreen. My car's going like, I'm driving like that. Jesus H. Christ, I think they're shooting at us. But they stopped and we got away. But that was about the most sort of violent thing, I suppose, really.
8 life sentences, Noel. How would you manage to land that?
Well, what happened was, it was quite a thing, really, because I don't know if you remember, there was a Tory Home Secretary called Michael Howard. He was a real dog. And what he done was he went to America looking for ways to make criminal punishment worse over here. And he found they had this thing in America called 3 strikes and you're out. So what it is they class all your previous as 1 strike. Then if you commit 2 more strikes, doesn't matter what they are, you're going to prison for life. And I think that one of the first geezers who got it for stealing a hamburger because he had previous convictions that he got life. So Michael Howard went over there, saw that, come back here and decided to refine it. 2 strikes and you're out. It became the 2-Strike Life Act in 1987. No, 1997. And it was a brand new sentence. And what it meant was that all your previous were 1 strike, and if you committed another violent or serious offence, you go to prison for life, called the 2-Strike Life sentence. So all my life I've been trying to avoid a life sentence. I don't mind doing a bit of bird. Life sentence, you're fucked. Once you're in there, they've got you. And normally, you had to kill someone to get a life sentence. So I was always pretty good at that, avoiding that sort of stuff. And anyway, I went up for 8 armed robberies. The Laughing Bank robbers, I was the only one nicked. So they got me, and they've got me for 8 armed robberies, 8 lots of possession of firearms. And they've got loads of photographs of all these robberies with geezers in hoods, ski masks, robbing places, and they're going, that's you, blah, blah, blah. So I'm up for a 2-strike life. I know I can get, my brief said to me, you'll get a 2-strike life if you get found guilty. So my first trial at the Bailey, the jury were out 5 days. And when they come in on the 5th day, the judge said, answer me yes or no. If I was to give you any more time, could you come up with a verdict? And the foreman went, not if we sat here till Christmas, and it was July. So, boom, they're gone. And what they'd done was they put me on a retrial straight away the next week. I was on remand in Belmarsh, so I'm up and down to the Bailey every day for weeks. And eventually they put me in front of this jury. I'm not joking. It was a fixed jury, mate. 10 old women and 2 old geezers. You know, whereas my previous juries had all been mixtures of people. And I'll tell you a funny story. I've told it a lot of times, but it still bears witness. And I hope she's out there listening to it. First day of my second retrial, I look at the jury and 10 women, 2 geezers, and one of the women in the middle is the ugliest woman I've ever set eyes on. She looked like Fred West. Well, I thought it was Fred West in my jury. But she keeps looking at me. Bear in mind, I had hair then, white teeth, you know what I mean? I was like a young, handsome geezer there in my suit. And she keeps looking over, and every day we kind of wink to each other. So after the 3rd day, I've gone to my barrister. I said, I think I've got one of the jurors. He said, well, you only need one more, and that's it. You can fucking walk. So every day I'm winking and kind of, right, and she's back here. Right, that's fucking great. Anyway, the jury go out to consider the verdict. Now, bear in mind, the last jury's out 5 days and couldn't reach a verdict. This jury's out an hour. Come back in. My brief has gone, they probably want to ask a question. No, they've got a verdict. So they come in, and the judge says, the clerk of the court says, do you have a full person? And it's her. She stands up. I'm out. This is it. I've made it. So the judge says, the clerk says, I'm going to read you 16 counts. Now, if I get found guilty on count 1, I'm going to prison for life. There ain't no 2 ways about it. Count 2 and 3 and all that don't matter. They're just extraneous. So I'm waiting there for her to say not guilty. And the geezer says, guilty or not guilty? And she looked over at me and she went, guilty. And I went, you fuck it. I started giving it in the court. Now I've been found guilty of one, I'm getting life. So I start slagging her, slagging the judge, you fat bastard, I'll come up there and rip your wig off. And so the screws have dragged me out of the box of the Bailey and they're dragging me downstairs, beating the shit out of me. And eventually I've come up for sentence, and the judge, Walter Ayling QC, his name was, horrible man. He went, what happens is, if you get a 2-strike life, we didn't know this at the time, but because it was a brand new sentence, what the parole board will eventually look at when it comes time to release you is not only what you've done, but the judge's comments.
Aye.
Right? So what did he say when he sentenced me? He said, and I hope, he gave me 8 life sentences, 1 life sentence for each robbery, 8 lots of 10 years, 1 10 years concurrent for each firearm, all concurrent with each other, with a recommendation of 12 years, right? But with a life sentence, you're not getting out in 12 years, mate. That's when you go up for your first parole. You're getting out in 18, 19. So I'll give it to the judge. And what he said was, in order to fuck me up in the future, he said, I hope that if ever the parole board come to look in your direction for release, that they do not have the wool pulled over their eyes by you, as many others have in the past. So now that's down on me paper. The parole board are going to be looking at, I pulled the wool over his eyes. We won't have that. So I'll probably give it to the judge. They dragged me off, and I said to my barrister down in the cells, I said, look, Jim, I said, how long do you think I'm going to do out of this? And he went, to be quite honest, he said, I don't think you'll ever get out. He said, with your prison record, he said, you've got a record for prison escape, armed robberies, possession of firearms, grievous bodily harm. He said, this is a sentence that is probably going to kill you. He said, I think you might get released when you're so old and infirm that you'll be no longer a danger. He said, that's what the judge wants. So I went, fucking hell. So I thought my life's over. I went into jail, Belmarsh for 2 years, and I appealed. And my original tariff was 12, and I got it cut down to 8 on an appeal. So I had to do 8 years before parole.
Mm-hmm.
So what I'd done was I decided, life sentence, I'm never going to get out unless I behave myself. So I'm going to be a model prisoner. I give up smoking weed when I was in Belmarsh and never smoked it again for another 12 years. And because they had piss tests. And I had to do everything in order to show them that I had changed or I'm never getting out. So what I'd done was I was in Belmarsh. I was in Belmarsh for 2 years. Then they shipped me to Whitemoor in Cambridgeshire, which is one of the most top security prisons in Europe. And, proper 8 factory, that. And while I was in there in 2001, my son died outside. He was 18.
Bloody hell, sorry to hear that, man.
Yeah, so I got the message that my son had died. And because I'd been such a cunt all my life in prison, when I went to ask them to let me out for the funeral, they went, no. you don't think we're going to let you out for the funeral? You're doing life sentences, mate. You're armed robbery, prison escape, GBH, firearms, no. So I was devastated. And I had to change my life. I thought, I've got to change my fucking life. And I looked around and I see a prison. The only thing that I could see that offered me any hope was a prison called Grendon, HMP Grendon, in Buckinghamshire, which is a therapeutic prison. It's run on therapeutic lines, but you have to volunteer to go there. Mm-hmm. And they don't have to accept you. You have to pass an IQ test to get in there because they have to know that you've got the capability of understanding the therapy. So I passed. I'd done my first test, IQ test, and because I was in a hurry when they were doing it, it was called the Ravens test. It's like shapes, it's a book full of shapes and shit. I just went yeah, and I thought I'm bound to get half of them right, even if I don't fucking look. So cutting corners again, and they called me about 3 months later. I've pulled them, and I went, "When am I going to Grendon? Am I going to Grendon?" They went, "No, you failed your IQ test."
Shut up, man.
So I went, "What?" And by this time, I already had an A-level in law, a degree in journalism, proofreading. And so I knew I wasn't stupid. Mm-hmm. I was writing stuff. So I said, well, I want to take it again. So they said, all right, we'd give you another one, a different one, which I did, and I passed. Mm-hmm. So they said, right, you're off to Grendon. And Grendon has a reputation, or it had a reputation, of taking a lot of dodgy prisoners, sex offenders, child sex offenders, rapists, arsonists, people who beat up old women. It was one of them nicks that had a bad reputation for that. Mm-hmm. But by the time I went there in 2003, I was, people were going, yeah, I hope you fucking do it, get through it, because it had sort of calmed down. And now I was one of the first sort of major, I suppose, prison faces who went to Grendon. And with that, loads of people followed me and went there, and we made it a decent prison. I mean, a couple of wings we were on that didn't have any sex offenders because they'd done different type of therapy to child sex offenders. Mm-hmm. So we never seen them. But we did see a lot of dodgy people in there who you wouldn't have it with in other prisons, people who've robbed old women and things like that. Mm. So the game in Grendon was this. Once you're accepted into Grendon, you're there to do therapy. You've got to put your old life behind you. They had 3 rules: no drugs, no sex, no violence. You couldn't leave your chair in the middle of an argument or you'd be shipped out. Right?
So even when you're listening to these stories and these beasts, you've got to just...
You have to, and that's part of the therapy. It was hard, but we never had no really bad fuckers on our group because you're in groups.
Right, I see, aye.
And they sort of spread these fuckers about. And there was one, the most horrible one we had on our group was a geezer from way up north somewhere. I can't remember where it was. And anyway, he had killed a 3-year-old boy by punching him in the stomach. He'd been left alone with the kid. He was going out with the kid's mother, and the kid was crying, and he was coming off a 3-day bender, so he punched the kid hard in the stomach and killed him. So we had him on our group. And we also had other dodgy people. But what you do is you try and, because you learn in therapy, you would try and therapeutically get into them, open them up, you know what I mean? Because you know the questions to ask. And that's why Grendon worked, because the prisoners really do the therapy, not psychiatrists or psychologists, although they are involved. And I spent 5 years at Grendon, wrote my first book while I was in Whitemoor, which was A Few Kind Words and a Loaded Gun. And Penguin took that, which was fantastic. It became a bestseller all around the world, number 28 on the Times literary bestsellers list at one stage. And then I just decided writing was my life. So after going through the therapy, 5 years of therapy and actually passing everything, they then sent me on to a semi-open prison called Blantyre House in Kent, which was a BC cat. But you could go out for weekends and stuff and go out to work. And I left Grendon, went to Blantyre House and started having home leaves. And in the end, I went up for parole 4 times from the 8-year mark. And I got parole when I'd done 12 years, which was my original tariff in the first place. So they cut 4 years off my tariff. I still didn't get out till I done my tariff. And what happened was, while I was inside, while I was doing this, I kind of discovered that I had a modicum of talent for writing. People wanted to read what I'd written, and I wrote my first book, and as I say, that became a bestseller. And then I think I've written 9 books now, something like that. But I kept writing them because the money was coming in. It was, it was one of those things I couldn't believe. I earned more money out of writing books than I ever did from robbing.
Did you get a buzz from writing books?
I do, yeah. Because the thing is, I got the same buzz that I used to get from robbery.
It's crazy, that, isn't it?
Yeah.
If only you'd known that to start with. But then again, did you have to go through the robberies to find out that you could write? Do you know what I mean?
Exactly.
What was it like in prison, Noel? Like, what type of characters were you meeting? Were you meeting any particular big names and stuff? Were you scared by these type of characters? Because obviously, you've mentioned a few there, Belmarsh, Whitemore, all these places. Obviously, you've got the likes of Bronson in these places, haven't you? Like, what was all that like? Meeting these characters?
The thing about it is this: you've got to understand, if you've been through the system, right, you've gone from juvenile, you've come up into adult, you've done a few prison sentences, people know you, you've been around, it then becomes the norm for you. I was never impressed by any big names. That wasn't my way. I like people, and I would get on with certain people. Charlie Bronson, I always got on with Charlie. He was a good mate of mine for ages. We were next door to each other in a block in Idan. So yeah, I met basically every criminal you could probably fucking name. I mean, Whitemore was full of a lot of lads from the northeast who were all into steroids and drug dealing and nightclub bouncing. There was wars, I don't know if you remember, with Middlesbrough and all that. And so you don't meet all these people. I met Ronnie Kray and the Scrubs, Reggie Kray, sorry.
What was he like?
Never really impressed me. He was a little geezer with a squeaky voice.
Was he?
Yeah, he was just like, you're expecting, you've heard all these years about they was the top gangsters and all that, and you're expecting like a 6'6" geezer, like who's right with it, and he wasn't. And it was just, I won't say it was a disappointment because I never really looked up to them. I thought the Krays were mugs anyway.
Did you have much interaction with Reggie?
No, just said hello to him. That was all.
That was it.
But I was one of them kind of people. I was an horrible bastard. I really was. I mean, I remember there was a fella called Steve Dark. Yeah, Steve Dark. He was an old villain. His brother was a villain, Johnny Dark, and he got killed by what's his fucking name? He became an actor. Johnny Bindon.
Right.
Right, Johnny Bindon killed Steve Dark in 1979 in a fight in a Randy Yacht Club, and then escaped to Ireland, and then come back and got nicked for the murder. But he'd done a lot of films, Johnny Bindon. He was in a lot of gangster films in that, even though he was a real fucking villain from the West End. So he got his murder trial in 1979, and this is a long story. It's not. He got his murder trial in 1979, and Bob Hoskins, right, who was a big British actor at the time and was in A Long Good Friday, he came up and gave evidence for Johnny Bindon. Now, Johnny Bindon's nickname was Biffo. Right, because he knocked people out. So when they got Bob Hoskins, this was in the papers and everything, they got Bob Hoskins in the dock, and the prosecutor said, "We believe that you know Mr. Bindon as Biffo. Why is that?" Thinking, here we go, we've got it proved. And he went, "Because he's a big cuddly bear, isn't he?" You know what I mean? And that was it. He got not guilty. Johnny Bindon got not guilty of killing.
Steve Dark.
Yeah. Tony Dark, Steve Dark. Anyway, Johnny Dark. So anyway, I'm in the years, and I know Bindon. I've met him a few times in jail, and he's a nice geezer. I quite like him. He's funny. Well, he's dead now. But so I'm in Wandsworth, and there was a geezer called Johnny the Jug, a bank robber from the West End, Johnny the Jug, and he's one of them kind of geezers who likes to do everything properly. So he said to me, "Oh, mate, mine's coming down from Long Lartin tomorrow. He's getting shipped down to here because he's going onto another prison." He said, I'll introduce you to him. I went, "Who is it?" So when it's John Dark. I went, didn't Bindon kill his brother? And he went, yeah, don't mention that. He went, and don't mention Bindon either. He said, that's a bad. He said, like, he's really fucking upset about that. So I went, all right. So he's come down. Johnny's called me down to his cell the next day. He's just moved in. So as I walked over to him, he's gone to John Dark. He's gone, or Steve Dark, whoever it was, fucking hell. He's gone, this is me mate Razor. So I've put my hand out, and he's just kind of looked me up and down and went, yeah, and walked back into his cell. And I thought, I'm not having that. I went, yeah, I've got a visit next week. I said, Johnny Bindon's coming to see me. I'll ask him about your brother. He went fucking mental. So he's trying to get at me out of Johnny, the other Johnny the Jugs in between us. But I just didn't have no respect for them kind of people.
Did you get into much beef in there, though? Did you get into much violence in that yourself when you were in prison?
You can't help it. You can't go through the top security prisons and not be involved in violence. Everyone's a killer.
How bad was it? Like, what type of stuff did you see in there?
Loads of fucking shit. I took a geezer's eye out in the scrubs.
You did?
Yeah. Fucking hell. I mean, I bit a geezer's ear off in Ballstall. You would see stabbings and scaldings that would make you fucking sick. I remember when I was in Albany on the Isle of Wight back in the early 90s. And the big thing then, you could do your own cooking. So there was a mate of mine had an argument with a fella, a big rasta, and went down I was behind him in the canteen on a Thursday where you could buy your food and that. And he said to the screw behind the counter, he went, give us 3 pounds of lard. So the screws looked at me, he went, why do you want so much lard? He went, I'm doing a big roast. Gone back to the wing. Right, and he knew this geezer who he'd had the trouble with, went into the toilet every night at 8:15 because it was 8:30, bang up, and he would sit in there reading his paper, and they're half doors, you know. So what he'd done was put a big pot on the oven, 3 pound of lard into it, waited till it was bubbling, got the oven gloves, got it, running up, landing, out of the way, boys, out of the way, we're all moving out of the way, and he goes in, straight over on this geezer's head, 3 pound of lard, liquid form, bubbling. Mate, I've never seen nothing like it. We couldn't get rid of the smell out of the wing for about 6 weeks. This geezer roasted. He had dreadlocks, and as he went, and as he's coming out of the toilet with his trousers around his ankles, there's bits of his skin falling off. It's going pink, and all his dreadlocks are falling out. There's smoke coming out of him.
It's terrifying.
And the screw, we're all at the door, right, because we know it's going to happen, all the prisoners, and the screw hears the screaming, comes running in, pushes everyone out of the way, turns him over because he's fell down at the urinal, turns him over and vomits on him immediately because of the state of him. You know what I mean?
Did you find that many young prisoners would look up to people like you or want advice? Because you must know everyone, you're respected, you've been in the system for years. Did they because I'm just trying to think of it, if I went to prison now and I'd seen someone who was a bit older, they'd done a lot of time, they were a lifer, I'd probably try and gravitate to them because I'm like, you're going to know a few people in the system. I'm trying to survive here. Did you find that, or was that not the case?
It happens sometimes. When I was in local jails and things like that, I'd take people under my wing if I saw them getting a hard time, you know, because I hate bullies. That's the thing is I hate bullies.
Did anyone try it on with you?
Loads of times, yeah. In the early days, yeah.
And then towards the end, was that just kind of simmered down?
People knew who I was. I made my bones very early on in prison, you know what I mean? When I was young. I'd done a night watchman with a steel bucket during an escape attempt, fractured his skull, ended up in solitary confinement for 9 months. You know, people knew about me. Wherever I went, I wouldn't take no shit. But most of my fucking violence and rage was directed against the system. It weren't directed against other prisoners.
Yeah,
the system was my enemy. Do you know what I mean?
So did you have many fights with the screws and that? No.
Oh yeah, yeah, fucking hell. The last thing you want to do.
Ended up down the block.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you end up down the block with a couple of broken ribs and fucking covered in your own vomit. Like, for 3 months, you soon realise the error of your ways if you're sensible, but I wasn't sensible. But I knew, this is the thing, this is the buzz, right? And I'll explain it like this. You know, if you're like me, you know that if you lay a hand on a screw, you're going to get fucking beaten for it. You are going to get, his mates are going to give you a good kicking. Mm-hmm. So this is what I used to do. I'd be arguing with a screw, and in my head, I'm thinking, can I take the beating? Fuck it. And I'd throw a punch, right, knock him onto the floor, and then all his mates would come running. And I know I'm going to get beaten.
Exactly.
But what can you do? You have to take it. I mean, they probably slaughtered me, knocked me teeth out and everything, tried to threaten to kill me in Wandsworth. They come in with a knotted noose made out of bed sheets after I had assaulted 2 screws in there during an escape. And they said, you're going to end up on the window bars. He said, just another statistic.
Did you see many suicides in that?
Loads of them, yeah.
Did you?
Yeah.
Was there any common traits, like what type of people were killing themselves and what for? No, you don't know. You mentioned, obviously, you've had a brief interaction with Reggie and that. Is there any other names that people know about where you came across them or they weren't all that, or actually wasn't impressed by him?
I'll tell you what, I've found most of the major criminals, and I mean, I could mention major criminals who are absolutely the top of their tree and nobody will know who the fuck they were.
Aye, I get
You know,
that.
it's that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
But who was I not impressed? I'll tell you who did impress me. Davey Hunt, the long fella. You ever heard of him?
No.
No.
Who's he like?
Maybe I better not mention that as it happens because that's a bit, he's still about.
Is he?
Yeah.
Aye, that's fair enough.
But let me think, who didn't I like? There was a few that, like, there's a few people in prison, right, who if you're talking to them face to face, you can see in their eyes that they will kill you with no problem. They don't give a shit. And when you see people like that, it kind of like, that's when my back goes up. I think, well, keep away from that fucker. And there was a few like that. Charlie wasn't like that, Charlie Bronson, because Charlie was always a funny geezer as well.
Do you reckon he'll ever get out? No. Because did he have a parole hearing recently?
Yeah, but what people don't understand is this: there's a system. You have to work your way through a system. If you're a Category A prisoner like he is, you can't be released. You've got to. Yeah, they've got to give you a Category B. You've got to be a Category B for 2 years with no trouble. Then you've got to be a Category C for 3 years with no trouble. Then you've got to be Category D for 2 years with no trouble before you get out. If you're a lifer, he hasn't even come out of Cat A. He's still Cat A after, 30 odd years?
So you reckon he'll die in that?
I think they'll do to him, which is unfortunate, what they've done to Reg Kray, and that's let him out when he's got a few days left to live, and that'll be it. That'll be their concession. They're terrified of him. And think about it, mate. Do you want him living next door to you?
No, but I didn't, right?
No, I've lived next door to him.
There you go. But at the same time, if someone like him, and again, because he's not here to speak, but, you know, if someone like him hasn't killed anyone, he hasn't done this, like, what's so bad about him? Do you know what I mean? Like, is he a threat? Like, is he going to rob your mother? Is he going to really, like, he's not going to do all that, is he?
What it is, all it is about him is he has fucked the system up so many times that the system does not want to let go of him. And once the system's in charge, and they are when you're a lifer, it's up to them when you get out. If you've done what Charlie's done, he's had the roof off Broadmoor twice, it's cost him fucking thousands, you know what I mean? And all the years of bashing screws and kidnapping governors and all that, you know, you're not doing yourself any favour. You kidnap a governor and take him hostage, you're never going to get out, mate. It's as simple as that.
That's absolutely mental.
Yeah.
When you were, if you look at, I don't know how much you're on social media and how much you're looking at podcasts and stuff, and I know you didn't really do podcasts. That's, again, why I appreciate you coming on, mate. What do you think of the current state of younger criminals now? Because everyone's got guns, and that's what you're hearing all the time now. Like, I had a guy on earlier on who, you know, knife crime was popular when he was younger, but he said everyone now, you know, it's guns everywhere and stuff. What do you think about, you know, where crimes go now? Do you think more people are getting involved? Do you think prisons are full of just guns, young lads with guns? How are things going now with crime?
To be honest with you, prisons are full of inadequate people who are in for petty offences. You're talking about 80,000 people in prison. Not every one of them is a criminal mastermind. In fact, none of them are. Right? And what you're talking about there is you're probably talking about 5,000 prisoners. This is from my experience of travelling 30-odd different prisons and being in prison for 34 years. You've probably got about 5,000 prisoners who are actually a danger to the public. The rest are all window shopping and ways of making money, because one of the last geezers I met before I come out had been in prison for 4 months on remand for attempting to steal an empty suitcase off a railway line, off a railway station. Now, he said, I know when I go up, I'm going to get 3 days prison, and I've already done 3 months. So that's what you've got in prison. People who don't pay their council tax. It's not full of rapists, murder. If you go into the top security jails, yeah, everyone's a winner. If you go into normal jails, which is 2/3 of the prisons in this country, it's full of inadequate people who are addicted to drugs, who are addicted to alcohol, who have no education, people who just drift into crime for no reason, shoplifters.
I was going to ask you what it was like to be released, but obviously you've had that feeling before. The final time when you got released, obviously you've said no more. Obviously you're doing amazing things. You're writing. I mean, you've done 9 books. You're doing great things. Obviously the Inside Times. Yeah. Obviously you're a journalist for that. You're doing great work. You can see you're a gent. You've had that life behind you, and I think, you know, touch wood, you're healthy. You're living to tell the tale. Hopefully people are going to look at you. And again, I want to make it important that it's clear that I don't want to glamorize this stuff, because I know there'll be young lads watching this thinking, you know, I might rob someone. You never know, and I want them to look young. And look, he's had 34 years in prison, mate. That's not impressive. He's did it because he's had to do it and live a certain way. It's a different time now, and people have got different opportunities. What you've had, they weren't having baths at the bottom of the garden. They weren't doing all that type of stuff. So, what did that feel like for you finally, and why have you said no more?
I kind of, I would have had enough of it long before I actually give up, but I didn't know. When you're in prison, this is the worst thing. Go to prison young. They don't teach you any different. They know you might think people outside, normal straight going people might think that when they put people in prison, what they do is work with them and go, listen, you need this, you need to stop doing. They don't. They put you in a fucking cell with 2 other kids and leave you there most of the day with a telly, a portable telly. So kids nowadays, I mean, when I was, I understand what you're saying about the gun crime, but I remember in the 70s when we were all into gun crime. You know, everyone had a fucking gun. There were shootouts all over South London. But where I live was known as Murder Mile. So many people got shot down there. But then it moved on to knives. But we also had knives in the 70s. Yeah. Nothing's changed really. All that's changed is the kind of the paraphernalia of crime. You know, the sort of crimes you can get away with. You can't rob a bank nowadays. You ain't getting no more than fucking 600 quid. They don't keep no money there. Everyone pays by card. You know, you can't, there's loads of things you can no longer do that we used to do as criminals. So I think it kind of, and another thing is this, I've often thought this, when I grew up in the 60s, when I was a kid, our heroes on the telly were like John Wayne and the Lone Ranger and Jesse James and Robin Hood. They were all criminals, right? But they were different types of criminals. Yeah. They had a code, they had morals. So then the kids of the 80s, they started taking heroes from Colombian drug gangs and Scarface, and where it's about killing as many people as you can. And the Yardies became popular down to that. Yeah. You know, they would shoot. I was inside with 2 Yardies who fired off, I'm not joking, 260 rounds out of 2 machine guns at a security guard who had dissed one of their wives and only hit him once with a ricochet off the floor and killed him. 260 rounds. And when he showed me his evidence photos, they've got the big scene and they've got little notes next to every cartridge case that's come out. 260 cartridges, and they hit him with a ricochet. They got no clue, kids nowadays. They think that, you know, that's glamorous. You're going to be in prison, you're going to be one of the big boys and all that. You're not, mate. You're probably going to get mugged off unless you're strong enough. Look at these kids now. I see kids coming in doing 25-year minimums for shootings.
That's the thing, isn't it?
It's madness.
I was going to say crime doesn't pay, but
it doesn't.
It did in your age.
No, it didn't.
Did it not?
No, I'll tell you what, it paid only in so much as you was able to get a living out of it, but that living was like an oasis in a fucking desert because the rest of the time you were in prison. Yeah, so, and I say that to kids when I go and visit them in young offenders, Nixon, now. I'll get kids in front of me and they go, well, I'm earning £1,000 a week dealing dope, so why should I give up? What job would I be doing if I can't deal a bit of gear? And I just look at him and I say, the last one, I went, how long are you doing, mate? He went, 7 years. So I went, yeah. I said, how much are you getting every week for the next 7 years in here? He went, £9. I went, well, fucking think about it. Yeah, you might earn £1,000 outside selling dope for 3 months, but then you're in for 7 years. What's the point? And
if you break that down, it works out less than minimum wage, doesn't it?
I try and, there's only one thing that prisoners can do that I try and talk them into doing, and that's writing. You can do it from prison. You can explain your life. It doesn't even have to be commercial. Some people just need to write everything down in order to understand where their life is going. The first thing you do in therapy, you write your life story.
Do you regret anything?
I regret it all. Believe me, every single bit of it I regret. If I could go back to 1975 now, when I'm getting it, I would just accept it and that'd be it. Because what came afterwards has ruined me. I mean, I never seen my children for 20 years. My son died. I couldn't even go to his fucking funeral. You know, I love my kids and my grandkids, but I've been missing out their lives for years and years on end. And it's so hard to make it up again when you come out, and it's so hard to get a job, and it's so hard to get people to trust you. So, you know, being a criminal, you might think it's great at the time. And yeah, it can be a bit glamorous for about 5 fucking minutes. But after that, after you get nicked and you're getting your head kicked in by the flying squad, or you're in a prison cell and you've got some rapist wants to rape you, or, you know, you walk out your cell and some nutter hits you in the face with a bed leg, which happens all the time, or scolds you.
Was that true about people getting raped in prison? Does that happen a lot?
It does happen, mainly on the sex offenders' wings.
Does it?
But the thing is, if you, this is the thing. If you come on a top security jail and you fuck up, say you owe people money or you grass someone, you're going onto the sex offenders wing for protection, and they're the people who get raped, not the sex offenders. It's them. So yeah, it does happen. It doesn't happen a lot on normal location. I must admit, in all my years in jail, I ever only see probably 2 or 3 men who are openly gay in prison and would have sex with other men. The rest of them, it's an embarrassing thing. In American jails, it's about power, apparently, raping other men. But over here, it's an embarrassment. You can't rape another geezer on the wing and get away with it. You get run off the wing by everyone else. You know what I mean? It's not, doesn't happen. You're a sex offender if you do that. It's as simple as that, and you get treated like a fucking sex offender. Yeah,
and that's the way it should be, I suppose. Plans going forward, Noel? Obviously, I know you're writing. You're still doing your journalism, the column and that. You're going around. Are you going around prisons now doing talks? Is that what you do?
I stopped doing it during COVID, but yeah, I went around a lot of prisons, and I also speak to a lot of criminology students. I do a lot of tours, Manchester, Glasgow, places like that, Birmingham. Do a lot of, obviously, television. I do loads of videos. In fact, I'm doing one in 5th of May, I think. I can't remember. But yeah, I mean, my game is now is to work to kind of stay under the radar as far as the police is concerned. And I've now been out nearly 15 years, so that's an achievement. I've never been out longer than fucking 3 years, I think, without getting nicked again. So when you've done all that bird and you get out, you realise how precious life is. You know, you think, fucking hell, I could still be in there. If sometimes I wake up in the morning and think I'm still in prison until I open my eyes.
That's crazy, that. Like, what's your relationship with the police now?
I don't have no relationship with them at all.
But what's your thoughts on them now?
Look,
Did you feel like they were not when you were a kid because it was?
I've always thought the police do a fucking good job, and without them, we'd be in trouble. Because as they say, you know, if someone burgles your house tomorrow, who are you going to call? The local gangster? You're going to call the fucking police, ain't you? I've got nothing against the police. I've met a lot of decent coppers over the years, and I've also met a lot of scumbags. And you'll find that with every occupation. You know, some people are all right, some people ain't.
Final question, Noel. Do you ever miss that life? Do you ever want to do you crave the buzz? I know you get it from writing, but do you ever drive past a bank at 12 o'clock on a Monday morning and think...
It's like being an old war horse when you hear the bugle. You see the van, you look at your watch. That'll be here next week at 10:30. You know, you miss it in that way, but it doesn't make an impact on you, if you know what I mean.
Because for me, if I'd made X amount of money by doing a job like that, right, I feel like how could I go back to making £9 an hour? I understand that it doesn't pay in the long run, as you've said, but it'd be very hard to sort of understand the value of things. Like, well, a 5-minute job, I could have that house.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Or I'll do the next 10 years at this company.
That's why most kids think like that. It's a now. People want things now. You know, it's that kind of thing. But, you know, at the end of the day, what do you want to do? Do you want to give up your life? And I mean, prison is fucking disgusting, mate. Cockroaches, filthy food, fucking hard beds, mugs all around you wouldn't even speak to on the outside, and you have to live with them. And it's just a waste of time. It really is. So even though I know I could probably go in tomorrow, well, I couldn't really. The banks don't hold no money anymore. I could probably rob a security van tomorrow and probably walk away with maybe 50 grand. But then what? Once that's spent, you're no longer in your job, so you've got to rob another one.
And then you're on the run or whatever.
And that's it. And that's why anyone who goes out to commit armed robberies, it's inevitable almost that you're going to get arrested because you can't commit one unless you're doing one big fucking super job that's going to give you millions of pounds. And it never is.
Noel, thanks a lot for your time, mate.
Been my pleasure.
Thank you, mate. Cheers. So you've made it to the end of the episode. Fair play. If you want to watch more episodes like this, click here.